Good afternoon, everyone. How y'all doing? Marques Armstrong here. I am here with none other than Pastor Brian C. Herron, one of the special guests that we'll have this month at Assata Speaks at the Unspeakable Joy. It's titled Unspeakable Joy. Man, each and every single Assata Speaks has been amazing. My wife and I are saying to ourselves, wow, how are we going to top the next one? And unbelievably, it keeps getting better and better. And so this month, again, we are super excited about it. We have some very special people again. Pastor Brian is one of them, Catrice Jackson is another one, and Latunji Abrams as well. But right now, we're gonna just hear a little bit from Pastor Brian about, learn a little bit about him and what he will be talking about. So welcome, Pastor. Glad to have you here.
Amen. Thank you, Marques. Been pastoring Zion now for 12 years. Just turned 63 years old.
Wow.
And I think as you get older, you become more reflective on each birthday.
Yeah.
And so I was reflecting on the journey, on my journey. There was a time when I was, I think, 21, where somebody told me I wasn't going to live very long if I kept living the way that I was living.
Right.
And so the other thing that I began to reflect on is that I never took the time to glean from and to appreciate the journey. It was always the destination that was important to me. And so most of the time when I landed at that destination, I was totally unprepared.
Right.
Because it's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
And in relationship to the theme, it is in the journey that you begin to develop this joy for life,
right,
and for living, so that joy begins to manifest no matter what you're going through.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. So pastoring here for 12 years, I have been under your preaching and teaching and guidance for those 12 years. I remember a little bit over 12, probably 12 and a half years ago is when I started to visit your father, Pastor Emeritus Curtis Herron, was senior pastor, and he had been senior pastor at that point, I believe, was it 36 or 37 years?
Yeah, 37
a great legacy. Shortly after, I think I visited maybe 3 or 4 times, and then I just felt it in my spirit to join.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter that, he retired, and I actually, you guys invited the congregation to stay to vote for you to see if you were going to become the senior pastor. Even though I was brand new, I was like, yeah, I think he should be. Not having much knowledge or history, I stayed and I voted. I remember I used to sit on this side of the church, probably 3 or 4 rows back. And since then, you and our relationship has grown tremendously. I remember one of the first conversations that we had, you had given me your number and you said, brother, if you ever need to talk about something, give me a call. And I want to tell y'all, you know, we hear people say that all the time, right? And I had heard that from many people, and when I would call, you know, they weren't available, or it wasn't what I was expecting it to be. So I was a little hesitant to do it because I'd heard it so many times. But when I called you, I was blown away that, first of all, that you answered. Second of all, I think we stayed on the phone for probably 3 hours.
Yeah, we talked for
a long time. And you were so honest and transparent. It blew me away because I had pastors on this pedestal, right, of being perfect. But you began to share some of the challenges that you had faced, some of the mistakes that you had made. And I was just sitting on the phone like, wow, okay, He's made some of the same mistakes I have.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges for pastors and for congregations is to not get caught up in the pastor, not get caught up into pastor worship, not look at the pastor as if he were God, but he is God's representative. And I think for pastors to help with that, pastors have to be very transparent, because that's how people see how God works through us, and that we face the same thing as the people that we're teaching and preaching to face. But they get a chance to see us live out loud our lives in front of them and watch how God works in the stuff that we face. I really think it's important that in life we take time to enjoy all of our life and not just part of our life. And so the thing that clued me in on this was that when I was released from prison, we were riding home. I saw trees for the first time.
Wow.
I saw grass. I saw flowers. I saw God in nature. For the first time, I was paying attention to the journey and not so much worried about or in a hurry to get to the destination. That's when I really realized that for 40-something years, I had not found real joy in my life because I had missed the journey trying to get to where I thought I was supposed to get to. And the joy comes from understanding sometimes how strong you really are. It comes from really seeing that there is a spirit life that is so powerful and that propels you, encourages you, moves you when you don't want to move, or when you're feeling down or depressed. And so our ancestors, they innately understood finding joy in the struggle. In the struggle, they found joy. We ain't talking about the happy darkies that are portrayed. We're talking about people who had this unspeakable joy in the midst of very difficult circumstances that kept them moving forward, even when they were told that there was no forward movement for them. And so the joy is important because the joy is divine. Happiness is natural. And happiness always depends on your circumstances and situations. But joy is something that is spirit and it is divine. And so it's not dependent upon the situation. If our ancestors didn't find joy in the struggle, then they never would have continued to struggle.
That's powerful, Pastor. So you spoke about, you used the term happy, but you were also speaking more about joy. And so sitting here, being, I'm going to say a student here at Zion Baptist Church, sitting under your teaching and your preaching and your leadership, I have begun to understand the difference because I thought it was the same. And so what I've learned is that how I see it now under the teachings is happiness is determined by things typically outside of us. A person, makes me happy. A thing, a car, money, and all of those things we can lose. And when that's gone, that happiness is gone with it. And so on the flip side of that is joy. And joy is that thing that is inside. It comes from within. It's a spirit thing, like you said. Can you speak more to that?
Joy isn't depending on anything exterior. people are always searching for happiness. I just want to be happy.
Right.
I just want to be happy. And so they're looking for something or someone or some success or some measure in their life to determine their happiness.
Yeah.
That's exterior, and it's very superficial because, but the search for happiness can lead to joy because when happiness begins to fade,
Keep going.
and you need to look to something greater than yourself, that's when you can discover in the spirit person the joy. And then joy becomes permanent. Joy isn't dependent on whether this person makes me happy or whether I have money or whether I'm rich or whether I'm poor. The joy is because there is something greater living in me that I have confidence in, that brings me to a place where I can even find joy in the midst of sorrow. I can find this joy in the midst of struggle. And it is that joy that propels me forward when I don't even want to move forward, or when everything is set against me and it seems like there's nothing to be joyful about. I can wake up, and every day that God breathes the breath of life in my body is a new chance for me to live a different kind of life or in a different way of living. And so there's joy wrapped up in that, that I have this joy that can't be defeated, and it's not determined by the world because it's not given to me by the world.
Yes.
It's given to me by God.
Yes.
And so there's a power that lies within it that keeps me always moving forward, no matter what I'm facing.
See, that I hope y'all listened to that. I hope y'all heard that. That is some wisdom. It is very powerful. I have a testimony to that. A few years ago, I had a major back injury. Had me on bed rest for about 4 months. They had me on so many drugs. I could not even read emails or respond to emails. And I'm an entrepreneur, so if I can't go to work, I can't produce any income. And so during that time, I was speaking to you. I was calling you, saying, "Pastor, I'm struggling with this," and I was sinking into a depression. And what you said to me was, "Don't focus on the pain. Focus on what God is doing with you, in you, through that."
That's right.
Right. And so I was not happy prior to that conversation. Because I couldn't do the things that I normally did. Getting up and putting on my clothes was a challenge. Even getting in the bath and the shower was a challenge. But when I heard you say that to me, and I began to really seek God and keep my attention on Him and not the storm was my back pain. I began to come up out of that depression and finding what I now know is joy, even in that struggle, even in that pain. I could begin to smile because I was connecting to the source, the person, the things that could actually heal me on the inside. Like the back pain was still there, that injury was still there, but there was a spiritual working beginning to happen because I took my focus off of the wrong thing, which was the pain, and placed it where it needed to be because God was trying to do something.
That's right.
In that.
And there's strength in that. There's a scripture that says, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." When my confidence is taken from me and placed in the right place in God, who is sovereign over everything, then I can be joyful even about pain and struggle or hurt or sorrow or even in grief, I can find a measure of joy because my confidence is in the sovereign God, the sovereign Lord who is able to do, to keep me in the midst of and to grow me in the midst of. Every trial, every storm becomes an opportunity to grow and to mature and to be stronger and wiser and better. You know, everything that happens. So now you're enjoying the journey. You're caught up in the journey. You're not caught up in the destination. When I was on my way to prison, I was depressed, I was downhearted, but when I got in that place and I began to move in the spirit rather than from my natural, and I began to see things that God was doing in that place, then that place wasn't prison anymore. It was a sanctuary. It was a seminary. It was the place where I worked, you know, where I counseled with other brothers. It became a workshop, God's workshop of affliction that shaped me and molded me into who you see now. And so that's a cause for joy. That's nothing to do with happiness and action.